So all eyes are on the intra-Afghan talks that are underway in Russia's capital, Moscow. The two-day meeting is seen as another step in a process aimed at resolving the 17-year-long Afghanistan war. The delegation attending the meeting released a joint statement saying that their goal is to start an intra-Afghanistan talks process. The conference brings together prominent figures from Afghanistan, opposition parties, the Taliban and tribal leaders of Afghanistan as well. The Afghanistan government led by Ashraf Ghani has been invited to the talks, and former President of Afghanistan Hamid Karzai is attending the two-day peace talks. On being asked about the Afghan government's absence despite being invited, Karzai said that he hopes that it will join the talks in the future.
A very good meeting, and officially we'll be talking later on.
Yes.
Yes.
But is that a problem that official Kabul government is not here?
Let's not speak about those things. We hope they will be there someday with us.
The Moscow talks are underlining the increasing role of Russia that's playing in Afghanistan decades after the Soviet forces withdrew from the country, with business investment plans, diplomatic and cultural outreach, and small military support for the central government. They also come as the Afghan government is struggling to recover control of districts lost to the Taliban. While the Russian government denies orchestrating the meeting, it says that the idea is to lay the foundation for an eventual peace process. Russia says that the Taliban are a part and parcel of Afghanistan and they cannot be ignored.
Россия, как вы знаете, активно выступает за налаживание межафганского диалога с участием и правительства, и движения талибов, поскольку талибы – это часть афганского общества, и никуда от этого факта не денешься.
The Moscow dialogue comes after officials from over 40 countries attended an international contact group meeting in London, where top US and Afghan officials announced their support for the Afghan peace process. We have Julia Chapman joining us live from Moscow for more on that big story that we're tracking here tonight on Your Story. Julia, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. Moscow has been sort of leading these talks, and in fact, on their invite, on the US's invite, the Taliban came to the table. But at the same time, you have the Afghanistan government, which has been dubbed as puppets of Washington by the Taliban, that has refused to show up for this round of talks.
Yes, that's right. But the Russian government has denied that it's actually organized these talks. They say that they've been organized by members of the Afghan diaspora in Russia and other former Soviet countries, and that they are being held as intra-Afghan talks and are not involving outside parties, including the Russian government, although the Russian foreign ministry yesterday said that they wish them all the best for these two-day talks that are happening here in Moscow. But there are, of course, some who are suggesting that Russia is actually orchestrating more than their appear to be doing behind the scenes. But of course, as you say, the Afghan government is not participating in these talks because they refuse to be involved in this kind of dialogue, and the Taliban, of course, itself is refusing to deal directly with the Afghan government. So there are question marks indeed over what concrete measures can come of these talks that are happening here in Moscow, although the peace process on Afghanistan does appear to be moving somewhat forward, with talks between the US and the Taliban happening in Qatar last month, which seemed to yield some progress on some sort of draft agreement of what peace in Afghanistan could look like in the near future. But that would, of course, involve US troops being withdrawn completely from Afghanistan. And as we know, there are still 14,000 US troops in Afghanistan. And so the Afghan government has serious concerns about that. And they're also critical that they are being left out of the process altogether, both by the US, which, of course, is their ally, but also by Russia.
But Julia, the problem here is that this two-day meeting that's hoping to establish a fundamental block for the peace process, is taking place without the Afghanistan government. And the Afghanistan government has been having its own problems with the US government because of the announcement of US President Donald Trump about the troop withdrawal. Ashraf Ghani has had serious problems with the sudden withdrawal of troops from his country as well.
Yes, that's right. There are serious concerns on behalf of the Afghan government about the withdrawal of U.S. troops. They're concerned that that could lead to further problems in Afghanistan. Another Taliban demand that has been made is that if this peace process were to be signed, once the U.S. troops were to have withdrawn completely from Afghanistan, the Taliban is in fact demanding that the Afghan military be dismantled altogether because they believe that it was created with the help of the U.S. government, and as a result of that shouldn't really be in charge of the military in Afghanistan. And that's something that the Afghan government under Ashraf Ghani, the president, is simply refusing to do because they think that would be a fundamental security risk in Afghanistan, and they have built this military that they want to see continue into the future. But of course it does bear the question, how can they move forward on these fundamental differences between them if the Taliban is refusing to sit down with the Afghan government itself?
Julia Chapman joining us with that update straight from Moscow. Thank you, Julia, for being with us and sharing that perspective. Away from that, now a day after the United Kingdom government ordered his extradition, fugitive Indian businessman Vijay Mallya has made it clear that he will make yet another attempt to delay his return to India. Taking to Twitter, Mallya said that he would appeal against the decision. He wrote, and I quote, "After the decision was handed down on December 10th, 2018 by the Westminster Magistrates Court, I stated my intention to appeal. I could not initiate the appeal process before a decision by the Home Secretary. Now I will initiate the appeal process," unquote. But Mallya's appeal will only be considered if the High Court grants him the permission. Earlier, UK's Home Minister Sajid Javid signed the extradition order 8 weeks after the case was sent to him for a decision. The news was first confirmed to Wion World is One by the spokesperson of UK's Home Ministry. The decision has been hailed in India and is being seen as a huge diplomatic success for the Indian government, which has been fighting tooth and nail to expedite the extradition of the liquor baron, or the former liquor baron. India's Minister Arun Jaitley took to Twitter saying, and I quote, "Modi government clears one more step to get Mallya extradited while opposition rallies around the Sarada scamsters," unquote, referring to the Sarada chit fund scam in the state of West Bengal. Government sources told Beyond World is One that they await the early completion of the legal process for Mallya's extradition. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has been hailing the tremendous progress in his dealings with North Korea. But now a United Nations report has highlighted that North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile programs remain intact. According to the report, North Korea is making sure that its nuclear and military capabilities are not destroyed by military strikes. The report comes at a time when Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un are planning to hold their second summit this month. The report found that Pyongyang is using civilian facilities for ballistic missile assembly and testing. This also includes the airport. The report says that there is evidence of a consistent trend on the part of North Korea to disperse its assembly, storage and testing locations. Not just that, the country has also been defying United Nations Security Council resolutions by increasing illegal ship-to-ship transfers of petroleum and coal. The report said that they had evidence of petroleum product transfer of more than 57,600 barrels. This is worth more than $5.7 million. North Korea has also been accused of violating a UN arms embargo. The report says that the country has been trying to sell military equipment to West Asia, Africa, Libya, Sudan, as well as the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Meanwhile, the US Special Envoy to North Korea, Stephen Biegun, will be traveling to Pyongyang tomorrow to prepare for the second US-North Korea summit. The date of the summit is expected to be announced later this week. Remember, Trump and Kim's landmark summit, which took place in the month of June last year, yielded a commitment by Kim to work towards eliminating his nuclear arsenal. When US Foreign Minister Mike Pompeo visited North Korea in the month of October, Kim committed to dismantling and destroying his country's plutonium and uranium enrichment facilities. Kim said that he would do this in return for corresponding measures from the United States of America. Biden has said that these corresponding measures will be discussed in the talks this week. It's not the first time a report has flagged North Korea's real intentions. Last week, the director of US National Intelligence, Dan Coats, said that North Korea was not likely to give up all its nuclear weapons. In the month of August, the UN nuclear watchdog, International Atomic Energy Agency, said that it found no indication that North Korea had stopped its nuclear activities. Now, in what comes as a vindication for the Modi government's strong stance against terrorism, data shows that terror attacks under the Modi regime has decreased. Home Ministry of India has put out a report which has specifically tracked the extent of terror attacks across the country. A Ministry of Home Affairs report pegs the number of terror attacks in India's hinterland at 6. That's since the NDA came to power in May 2014. 11 civilians and security personnel were killed in these attacks. About 7 terrorists were neutralized as well. In Kashmir, the situation has worsened. Over 1,700 terror attacks were carried in the state between 2014 and 2018. 138 civilians were also killed in these attacks, in which over 800 terrorists were neutralized. The last 4 years have seen many protests in the valley. Militant attacks, cross-border terrorism and incidents of stone pelting have indicated the political tension hovering over the valley. While Kashmir has deteriorated, northeast has been relatively peaceful. The attacks have come down from 824 when the Modi government came to power to 252 in 2018. Civilian deaths have decreased drastically as well, from 212 in 2014 to just 23 in 2018. Left-wing extremism remains at large in several states of India. It's one of the major security threats, and under Modi, the attacks due to left-wing extremism has decreased. In 2014, nearly 1,100 such attacks took place. That figure has come down to a little over 800 in 2018. Nearly 173 civilians were killed in these attacks in 2018, and nearly 225 left-wing extremists were also killed. On an overall basis, terror attacks have come down under the Modi regime, but Kashmir remains an exception. Away from all of that, the much-awaited Chinese Lunar New Year is finally here, and this is how the Year of the Pig is being celebrated across the world, especially in East Asia.
It's that time of the year again, to welcome the Year of the Pig. More than 1 billion people across the world have begun celebrating. Chinese cities are sparkling, buildings have been lit up with light shows and luminous decorations. Festive mood is palpable. And what better way to signal the festivities than with a grand show? The Spring Festival Gala is the longest running and most watched show in China. This year's performance featured 32 programs. Eye-catching dance and music dazzled the crowds. But it was the grand Kung Fu performance which stole the show. The 20,000 martial artists' execution was so perfect that the audience was left in awe. Some chose to usher the new year with prayers, hoping that the Year of the Pig blesses them with good health and fortune.
This year I'll be taking the National College Entrance Exam, so I'm hoping I can get a score good enough.
Chinese communities all over the world are joining in the festivities. Hundreds of people braved the rain to kick off the Lunar New Year celebrations in Sydney. The Sydney Harbour Bridge turned red and fireworks lit up the sky over the Opera House. Fireworks have a significant place in Lunar Year celebrations. The Chinese believe that the flash and bang of firecrackers and fireworks scare away demons and evil ghosts.
The Chinese New Year Festival was born 22 years ago. It was a small annual village event in Chinatown, and it has now grown to the largest Lunar New Year celebration outside Asia, with over last year 1.3 million people participating and an international media audience of 2 billion.
North Koreans too have joined in. It's now a public holiday in the socialist state. Pyongyang authorities arranged for children to be brought out for playing in prominent open spaces around the capital on the first day of the Lunar New Year.
To mark the Lunar New Year today, I came to these bronze statues of our great leaders here on Mansu Hill. We are happy to celebrate traditional holidays like the Lunar New Year.
The Chinese Lunar New Year festivities will end on 19th of February on a full moon night with a grand lantern festival. Bureau Report, Wion, World is One.